What is up YouTube, and welcome to this The Boys video. Wow, this was a stacked episode here, and this is the penultimate episode, and they knew just how to make this a standout and set things up for the next episode, which is sadly the season finale, leaving us with nothing good to watch. I guess The Mandalorian is back at the end of the month, and we've also got Bly Manor coming out very soon, so I will be breaking that down on the channel as well. The highlight of the episode for me was the hilarious porn parodies of the Seven and Billy going full badass on Vogelbaum. However, this episode opened with a powerful and timely message. There will be spoilers in this video, so please be warned. We open with a montage of a guy waking up each day and hearing the words of Stormfront. We already know that Stormfront has weaponized memes, much like Trump's campaign and the alt-right did to get him elected. And the parallels here are chilling as the guy played by Charlie Kuntz, who you may recognise as Neil from Community, increasingly starts to believe the words of Stormfront and the seemingly harmless "we need to do something" rhetoric that bites through to him, and we're seeing more and more action figures and pops of her in his room as he starts to believe there is a supervillain threat, despite it really being orchestrated by Homelander. He thinks the Asian guy who works in the store he frequents is a supervillain, and he decides to take matters into his own hands. He was just doing as he was told or what he thought was right, as Stormfront disavows it later in the episode. It's exactly what people like Trump do. Sorry to get political here, but it's hard to unpack this scene without pointing that out. And it did remind me of the movie Cuck, which is an interesting piece, not the best of movies, but it's an interesting insight into the indoctrination of people. And it's essentially really what Homelander was subjected to as a child by Vogelbaum, as we hear that later in the episode. We pick up after last week when Lamplighter has been captured and he is going to help Victoria Neuman to convince Congress that Vought are evil and need to be stopped. And he is the whistleblower here. He has told them everything that happens and they need to know exactly why there was Compound V being tested on people at Sage Grove. I mean, I would have thought it was obvious that they want to make more soups, but the boys and the rest don't know that the compound is currently just a bit unstable, and Lamplighter said he was just following orders. What does that remind you of? Neuman needs more to convince Congress, and Lamplighter won't be enough. And I expect most are under the control of Vought and in their pocket like in the comic. Now in the comic, Victoria Neuman was a dude called Vic Neuman, and that was called Vic the Veep, obviously the Vice President of the United States of America, a soup who was controlled by Vought in the background. So that is something to think of when we kind of think about the end scene where everyone's heads explode. That's another theory there as to who could be behind the whole thing, and she could simply be doing this as a false flag. Starlight is still on the run, and her mother stupidly called Ashley only for Black Noir to rush in and take both Starlight and her mother. Starlight is now clearly the enemy of the Seven and is the scapegoat for a lot of what was happened, which we see later on in the episode. I love how Frenchie has a chance at retribution after failing Mallory. He is tasked with protecting Neuman at all costs, while Hughie is left with Lamplighter, who is a galactic douchebag and is just sitting there smoking, eating pizza and watching porn parodies. The X-ray part of Amazon Prime gave us an insight into the names of these, and the one with the deep does it in the blowhole, which, sorry, I can't say that without laughing, was originally going to star the Deep himself before he was stopped by Vought themselves. The second one we see is Homebanger, Red, White and Anal, which is just pure gold, as it's a cuck kind of porn there where a man is made to watch another guy bang his wife, which is of course a big thing in right-left politics debates, with cuck being used as a slur on the left and people that the right seem as weak. Later on we also see one that the X-ray section of the app confirmed is Jack from Jupiter. Jack from Jupiter was a member in the Seven, and in the comics he was a member of the Seven, a debauched individual, and this scene is lifted directly from the comic volume, which just shares the name of this episode. We learn that Billy's dad is dead, but this is simply bait, as he's really alive and has come to the US to see Billy, and it's great to see John Noble here. The Lord of the Rings reunion was just too sweet, and can my fringe stands hold their hands up so I can see you? This was a lie by his mother, and it's evident that the toxic relationship between Billy and his father has made him the way he is, so angry at the world and violent. This is the same in the comics, and Billy even urinated on his dad's coffin. He hated him so much. This backstory maybe is setting up the theory a lot of you seem to have, that Billy's brother is actually Black Noir. I mean, we saw Black Noir's face, it was all scarred, and he doesn't hate almond joys because he doesn't like the taste, but he just has a tree nut allergy. I love that a tree nut allergy is the only weakness of him, and these scars could hint that, well, Lenny is alive. It's an interesting one there, nonetheless. We cut to the rally of Stormfront and Homelander, and we see a statue of Soldier Boy hinting for his debut in Season 3, and the pair say we need more soups, which is what she was trying to do in Save Grove, and I'd imagine that with the public support, Vought can bring their super soldier program out of the shadows and into the forefront, meaning they can spend more resources to make it, actually work. And Starlight is officially done with a 7, as Homelander confirms she is a mole. The pair then go to see Ryan, and I find it odd that Stormfront didn't know he existed, and it turns out Ryan is such a mummy's boy. He makes Lego brick films of her favourite movies, but to me, I found this very wholesome. This was The Blind Side, a story about a woman adopting a kid who's not her biological son, and about acceptance of race there. It's a very good movie if you haven't seen it. It's funny as Stormfront is a racist, and also wants to seemingly adopt Ryan, as they tell him how his father starred in movies, and just generally that there's a life outside of Lego brick movies of your mum's favourite movies. It's heartbreaking when they take Ryan after he learned the world he lives in isn't real. It's a just heartbreaking moment. Elena has now left Maeve after she shows her true colours, and is just awful. And we later also see her in bed with another man, as we know that she's bisexual, but unfortunately, it seems like lesbianism sells more and is more kind of really accepted. As Mallory meets with Vogelbaum, the only one who can provide more information, but he declines, and it takes Billy the Butcher to threaten his daughter and grandkids to do the right thing and testify at the Compound V hearings. He basically says that he's to blame for what happened, and he doesn't really care, as he indoctrinated Homelander to become his greatest creation. But Billy drinking tea menacingly is a thing of absolute nightmares. We see more of the Church of the Collective as the Deep gets a goldfish off A-Train at a party, and we learn that Eagle the Archer has been speaking out against the program, and he is to be ignored, which the Deep goes with. However, A-Train isn't fully there yet, and is confused as well. He was the Deep's friend. They've leaked horrible info about Eagle the Archer, and the seemingly leader of the collective has a meeting with Stan about getting the dependable heroes back into the 7. Let's not forget that Stan seemingly leaked the whereabouts of Billy to the church weeks ago. Now, Lamplighter and Hughie break into the tower, and Double L says how he and Marathon Man would sneak girls into the tower, Marathon Man being A-Train's predecessor, and they go to save Starlight, but it becomes clear that Lamplighter is just trying to make a gesture and burn himself, which he wanted to do in front of his statue to make his dad proud, which is a weird way to end this character. But in the actual comic, he survived, as when he was killed, he went on to become a zombie due to all of the Compound V in his body, and he will return. I think that we will see this, and then it will kind of set a precedent for having Lenny come back from the dead and become Black Noir. Starlight is released as Black Noir finds her, and they throw down until Maeve is able to neutralise him with nuts, which is just, that's just so funny. And we see his face, and it's now clear this is not Homelander, and I'm interested in to see what you guys think, because in the comics, Black Noir was able to actually subdue Maeve, and I think Maeve may, or at least, join Starlight or be convinced to go against Homelander straight up, but we all know what happened to that in the comics. Now, this last part of the episode is a genius, as it is an homage to the court scene in Batman vs Superman, where there is an explosion and Superman gets the blame. And this is the Compound V hearings. The big gun has arrived to tell all about Compound V and Vought, and, well, everyone's head seems to randomly explode. Many people get popped, including Shockwave, and does this make anyone else think that the Church of the Collective are behind this? A-Train's replacement gets randomly exploded, after a talk with Stan and Edgar. I've seen people say, why didn't they do it to Eagle the Archer? Well, obviously it would make them the prime suspect as he's gone to the media, and Vought have a history of this as Compound V was tested on people in Russia with a character called Nina Nemenko trying to use a super attack as a false flag to take over Russia, only for everyone's heads to explode, and then she exploded herself due to a exploding vibrator. This was a side effect of the formula used in that story arc that Vought had weaponized. I do think the church are behind this in some way, and Stan is also backing the church. Raynor, before her head exploded, said there was a coup going on in Vought, and Stan and Stormfront could be trying to take over Vought and create their own team called Payback. That's interesting. Now, Billy did have a plan to use his formula to kill every Sup, but this only harms his plan, and if Stan is behind this, and if Vic, or at least Victoria, is like she is in the comics, well, that means that she's just a plant and she is going on to survive and hopefully, or at least in Stan's eyes, change her mind. Cindy, I think, is a misdirect and will later on be used to prove what happened at Sage Grove. So let me know what you think in the comments of this episode. I absolutely loved it, and I'm super hyped for the next episode. So please do subscribe with notifications on if you want more from us, and I'll see you soon, and goodbye.